Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Thanks God. We are praying to Allah Subhanahu wa taala that today we can meet again in the good condition, in health, and starting our lecturing through spiritual meeting today. Let's reciting together Basmalah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Today we are going to listen the student presentation through the PPT PowerPointers, namely Rizky Budimansyah, and then M. Ikhwan Al-Kisam, and then Amanda P. Depitasari, and lastly M. Hanif S. Bagaskara. Student should be present the PPT just 5 minutes maximum. Okay, using the time effectively, I would like to give the opportunity to Rizky Budimansyah. Time is used in 5 minutes, please.
Baik, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat sore Bapak dan teman-teman semuanya. Izinkan saya di sini, Rizky Budimansyah dengan NIM 205212, untuk mempresentasikan mengenai Abdurrahman Wahid, analisis perkembangan politik serta gagasan pluralisme di Indonesia tahun 1999 hingga 2001. Nah, Abdurrahman Wahid atau yang lebih dikenal dengan sebutan Gus Dur ialah Presiden keempat Republik Indonesia yang menjabat dari 20 Oktober 1999 hingga 23 Juli 2001. Nah, kabinet pertama Gus Dur yang disebut sebagai Kabinet Persatuan Nasional adalah kabinet koalisi yang terdiri dari anggota berbagai politik, dari PDIP, PKB, Golkar, PPP, PAN, hingga Partai Keadilan. Kemudian Gus Dur juga melakukan reformasi administrasi. Reformasi administrasi yang pertama adalah menghapus Kementerian Penerangan. Kemudian reformasi administrasi yang kedua ialah membubarkan Kementerian Kesejahteraan Rakyat. Selain dua reformasi administrasi di atas, terdapat beberapa kebijakan dari Gus Dur yang memicu respon positif maupun negatif dari berbagai kalangan, khususnya dari sisi pemerintahan. Seperti contoh rencana Gus Dur untuk memberikan Aceh referendum. Namun referendum ini menentukan otonomi, bukan seperti referendum yang mengadopsi pendekatan yang lebih lembut terhadap Aceh dengan mengurangi jumlah personel militer di sana. Dan pada Maret 2000, pemerintahan Gus Dur mulai melakukan negosiasi dengan Gerakan Aceh Merdeka atau yang dikenal sebagai GAM. 2 bulan kemudian, pemerintah menandatangani nota kesepahaman dengan GAM ini hingga awal tahun 2001. Kemudian ia juga berusaha membuka hubungan dengan Israel yang menyebabkan kemarahan pada kelompok Muslim yang ada di Indonesia. Dan pada akhir tahun 2000 terdapat banyak elit politik yang kecewa dengan Gus Dur. Orang yang paling menunjukkan kekecewaannya ialah sosok Amin Rais. Ia menyatakan kecewa mendukung Gus Dur sebagai presiden tahun lalu. Amin juga berusaha mengumpulkan oposisi dengan meyakinkan Megawati dan Gus Dur untuk merenggangkan otot politik mereka. Kemudian pada akhir November terdapat 151 anggota DPR yang menandatangani petisi yang meminta pemakzulan Gus Dur. Nah, sejak awal 2001 posisi politik Gus Dur berada di titik paling rendah gara-gara yang dikaitkan dengan 2 skandal, yaitu tuduhan terlibat dalam penyelewengan dana Bulog atau Bulog Gate dan bantuan kerajaan Brunei untuk Aceh, yaitu Brunei Gate. Kemudian pada tanggal 1 Juli 2001 Gus Dur menyatakan keadaan darurat, namun ditolak oleh SBY pada saat itu yang menjabat sebagai koordinator politik sosial dan keamanan, di mana Gus Dur pula pada saat itu memberhentikan SBY. Kemudian Gus Dur mengumumkan pemberlakuan maklumat yang berisi pembubaran MPR DPR, kemudian mengembalikan kedaulatan ke tangan rakyat, dan yang terakhir membubarkan Partai Golkar, yang di mana ketiga maklumat tersebut tidak memperoleh dukungan, sehingga pada 23 Juli 2001 MPR secara resmi memakzulkan Gus Dur dan diganti oleh Megawati Soekarno Putri. Namun terlepas dari perjalanan politik Gus Dur, ia juga dikenal sebagai tokoh yang menggalakkan gagasan pluralisme. Gus Dur sadar akan kemajemukan bangsa ini, dan Gus Dur juga sadar bahwa ia manifestasikan dalam sikap mengakui sekaligus menghargai, menghormati, memelihara, dan bahkan mengembangkan keadaan yang bersifat plural tersebut. Di mana Gus Dur juga menciptakan pendidikan pluralisme, yang di mana pendidikan mencita-citakan terwujudnya kerukunan serta perdamaian antar umat beragama. Di mana ia memiliki 3 konsep, di mana konsep yang pertama ialah tidak terbatas pada materi atau informasi yang diperoleh dalam proses pendidikan, termasuk ketika materi itu sangat berbeda dengan keyakinan yang dimiliki. Kedua, tidak terbatas pada sumber informasi, dan yang ketiga, tidak terbatas pada teks yang sudah ada. Dengan kata lain, pendidikan yang mendorong seseorang untuk selalu kritis terhadap apa yang telah disajikan atau tersaji, utamanya dalam bentuk teks. Sekian penjelasan dari saya. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam. Thank you, Rizky Budimansyah. The next presenter is M. Ikhwan Al-Kisam. M. Ikhwan, time is yours. In 5 minutes, please.
Ya baik, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Nama saya Muhammad Ikhwan Al-Kisam dengan NIM 2004532 akan mempresentasikan tentang peran Gus Dur untuk kaum Tionghoa di tahun 1999 sampai 2001. Ya, di mana kita tahu pada masa Presiden Soeharto ini ada dikeluarkannya Impres nomor 47 tahun 1967 tentang pelanggaran ibadah serta kegiatan umat Konghucu di tempat terbuka. Dalam harian Kompas yang berjudul Pasang Surut Tahun Baru Imlek yang ditulis oleh Tommy Su, menyebutkan bahwa cleansing umat Tionghoa ini bukan hanya dalam pengertian fisik saja, tetapi juga pemusnahan hal-hal yang berbau Tionghoa dan kebudayaan termasuk agamanya itu sendiri. Nah, kemudian apa saja peran Gus Dur untuk kaum Tionghoa ini? Yang pertama adalah menjamin keamanan bagi umat Tionghoa. Sejak saat jadi ketua PBNU ini, Gus Dur ini menyuruhkan kepada keturunan Cina untuk yang berada di luar negeri untuk segera kembali ke Indonesia dengan menjamin keselamatan mereka kepada warga pribumi. Dan Gus Dur menghimbau agar mau menerima dan berbaur dengan warga keturunan Tionghoa tersebut. Nah, di poin kedua adalah kembalinya perayaan Imlek. Nah, setelah Gus Dur menjabat sebagai presiden ini, Impres nomor 47 tahun 1967 ini dicabut dengan Kepres nomor 6 tahun 2000. Dengan ini perayaan Imlek ini tentunya kembali bisa dilakukan oleh umat Konghucu di tempat terbuka atau tempat umum. Hal ini tentunya sangat disambut baik oleh para umat-umat Tionghoa. Majelis Tinggi Agama Konghucu Indonesia atau Matakim ini menyebutkan bahwa pencabutan segala larangan aktivitas dari umat Tionghoa ini sesuai harapan mereka kepada Kiai Haji Abdurrahman Wahid atau Gus Dur. Nah, hal senada juga diucapkan oleh Edi Lembong, Ketua Himpunan Keturunan Indonesia Tionghoa, yang senang akan keputusan ini, tapi menurut beliau bahwa keputusan ini cukup dirayakan saja secara cukup, itu tidak perlu berlebihan karena takut adanya gesekan di masyarakat, yang dikutip dari Koran Kompas tanggal 25 Januari tahun 2000. Kemudian poin ketiga adalah rekonsiliasi dengan Cina gitu dalam kaitannya diplomatik ini. Pada saat Gus Dur menjabat ini, Gus Dur langsung mengontak Cina dan berkunjung ke Cina tanggal 1 sampai 3 Desember tahun 1999. Gus Dur ini melakukan diplomasi antara lain pada bidang politik, ekonomi, dan sebagainya, karena yang kita ketahui pada masa Orde Baru, hubungan Indonesia dan Cina ini cukup membeku atau kurang bersahabat gitu. Kemudian PR adalah dalam negerinya itu sendiri, yaitu untuk menghilangkan penindasan terhadap minoritas, terkhususnya orang-orang Tionghoa itu atau keturunan Cina. Dan salah satu bentuk dari tindakan Bapak Gus Dur ini adalah sistem pemerintahan yang rasialis ini harus dihilangkan agar para pemilik modal-modal yang keturunan Tionghoa ini dapat berinvestasi kembali di Indonesia. Mungkin sekian dari saya. Cukup. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Terima kasih.
Waalaikumsalam. Okay, thank you very much. And Ikhwan Al-Kisam. The next presenter is Amanda P. Devitasari. Amanda, similar, your time also 5 minutes, please.
Baik, bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Saya Amanda Putri Devitasari dengan NIM 2004171 akan membahas mengenai masa kepresiden Megawati Soekarno Putri pada tahun 2001 hingga 2004. Nah, sebelumnya kita membahas dulu mengenai siapa itu Megawati. Megawati merupakan anak kedua dari Presiden pertama Indonesia, yaitu Insinyur Soekarno, dan istrinya Fatmawati. Wanita kelahiran tahun 47 ini memulai karir politiknya ketika Ketua Partai Demokrasi atau Demokrasi Indonesia atau PDI menginginkan anggota keluarga Soekarno untuk bergabung dalam kampanyenya dalam pemilihan umum pada bulan April 87. Ketua PDI tersebut berharap dengan adanya anggota keluarga Soekarno dalam partainya dapat menarik perhatian kaum muda untuk memilih partai tersebut. Saat pemilu tahun 99, Megawati yang mengetuai partai PDIP berhasil mendapatkan 34% suara yang mengakibatkan Megawati berhak untuk menjadi calon presiden atas dasar demokrasi. Akan tetapi, terdapat berbagai respon dari majunya Megawati menjadi calon presiden. Seperti majalah Tempo merespon bahwa Megawati belum tentu akan menjadi presiden karena Megawati berhadapan dengan partai-partai Islam yang kemungkinan tidak setuju dengan presiden wanita. Selain itu, dalam Tempo, majalah Tempo juga membandingkan bahwa Megawati tidak aktif dalam debat calon presiden dibandingkan calon-calon lainnya. Dalam majalah Gatra juga mengungkapkan bahwa ketidakaktifan Megawati itu dapat memicu turunnya jumlah dukungan suara baginya. Akhirnya Megawati pun kalah oleh Abdurrahman Wahid atau Gus Dur dalam pemilu Oktober tahun 99 dan ia diangkat menjadi wakil presiden. Nah, pemerintahan Gus Dur ini jatuh karena dugaan kasus hukum yang biasa disebut dengan Mulogate dan Brunei Gate. Akhirnya pada tanggal 23 Juli 2001, Gus Dur diturunkan dari posisi menjadi presiden dan Megawati maju sebagai Presiden Republik Indonesia kelima dan presiden wanita pertama dan hingga saat ini tahun 2022 satu-satunya di Indonesia. Megawati ini tetap mewarisi masalah-masalah yang ada dalam kepresidenan Soeharto, B.J. Habibie maupun Gus Dur yang tentu saja belum terselesaikan. Bersama dengan wakilnya Hamzahas, Megawati terus menghadapi permasalahan-permasalahan tersebut dan juga mendapatkan permasalahan-permasalahan baru. Seperti pada awal pemerintahannya, dunia dihadapi dengan kejadian 9/11 di Amerika Serikat. Amerika ini menuduh bahwa Al-Qaeda sebagai dalang dari kejadian tersebut dan meluncurkan perang anti-teroris di Afghanistan. Indonesia sebagai negara dengan mayoritas agama Muslim tentu tidak setuju dengan keputusan Amerika ini. Bahkan ada yang menyerukan untuk jihad ke Afghanistan untuk membela Islam. Megawati sebagai presiden tidak menyetujui tetap gerakan Amerika ini, akan tetapi Indonesia yang saat itu masih dilanda oleh krisis keuangan membutuhkan bantuan finansial dari negara-negara lain sehingga mau tidak mau harus tetap netral. Walaupun begitu, pemerintah tetap melarang warga Indonesia untuk ikut dalam pertempuran Afghanistan dan juga terdapat berbagai penangkapan para pengikut radikal Islam. Selain itu, pada bulan Oktober 2002, Indonesia juga diguncang dengan kejadian bom Bali yang menewaskan ratusan warga negara Indonesia maupun warga negara asing. Akibat dari pengeboman tersebut, turisme di Bali terhambat selama sekitar 1 tahun. Dari peristiwa tersebut, sebenarnya terjadi ketegangan yang ada terjadi antara Indonesia dan Australia mulai membaik. Hal itu disebabkan karena banyaknya warga negara Australia yang menjadi korban jiwa dalam bom tersebut. Indonesia dan Australia yang awalnya memiliki ketegangan semenjak kejadian Timor Timur sepakat bahwa mereka memiliki kepentingan yang sama, yaitu melawan teroris. Pada tahun itu juga, pada pendukung Islamisasi Indonesia yang menginginkan Indonesia kembali kepada Jakarta Charter kalah dalam mengamandemen Undang-Undang Dasar. Pada sidang umum tahun 2002, MPR mengubah amandemen Undang-Undang 45, yaitu mulai dari tahun 2004, MPR akan terdiri dari DPR dan DPD yang dipilih secara langsung, sehingga militer dihilangkan dari Dewan Perwakilan. Dan juga pemilihan presiden dan wakil presiden akan dilakukan secara langsung oleh rakyat. Pada pemilu 2004, Megawati berpasangan dengan Hashim Muzadi sebagai capres dan cawapres. Nah, majalah Tempo ini kembali juga memberikan tanggapan atas pencalonan Megawati ini, bahwa sebenarnya Megawati pada pemilu sebelumnya terkesan diam, sedangkan pemilu saat ini dia banyak berinteraksi. Perubahan tersebut dimungkinkan karena menurunnya suara dukungan kepada PDIP dalam pemilu legislatif di bulan April. Nah, penurunan itu kemungkinan terjadi karena kekecewaan masyarakat terhadap kinerja Megawati selama 3 tahun. Akhirnya Megawati pun kalah dalam pemilu 2004 oleh Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono. Sekian yang dapat saya sampaikan. Terima kasih.
Okay, thank you very much, Amanda P. Deputasari. The last presenter is M. Hanif S. Bagaskara. M. Hanif, bismillah, your time also 5 minutes, please.
Ya, baik. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Baik semuanya, pada hari ini saya akan mempresentasikan tentang PPT saya gitu ya, yang berjudul Perkembangan Otonomi Daerah Kalimantan Timur pasca Orde Baru dari tahun 1999 sampai 2014. Nah, jadi sebelum adanya reformasi gitu ya, Indonesia khususnya Kalimantan Timur tuh masih sama gitu, masih masuk dalam Indonesia yang masih memakai pemerintahan yang sentralistik gitu. Jadi apa ya, pemerintahan pusat itu lebih diutamakan gitu dalam pembangunannya gitu, yang mana hal ini tercantum pada Undang-Undang Pemerintah Nomor 5 Tahun 1974. Nah, kemudian dalam membangun negeri gitu ya pada masa Orde Baru dan atau sentralistik itu dikenal dengan rencana pembangunan 5 tahun gitu atau Repelita, yang mana dalam Kalimantan Timur sendiri itu memiliki fungsi gitu, di mana kelihatan pada proses Repelita kedua, yang mana lebih fokus pada fungsi ketujuan transmigrasi penduduk gitu, yang mana berdasarkan Posmonegoro gitu ya, dalam Repelita 2 program transmigrasi diharapkan akan memindahkan 250.000 kepala keluarga, terutama daerah-daerah Jawa, Bali, dan Lombok ke Sumatera bagian selatan, Kalimantan Tenggara, Sulawesi Tengah, dan Sulawesi Tenggara gitu. Nah, selain daripada transmigrasi penduduk gitu ya dari Jawa ke daerah-daerah lainnya gitu, dalam Repelika 2 ini juga ada program lainnya, yaitu dalam proses pembangunan wilayah pembangunan utama gitu atau singkatan WPU, yang dimana dalam wilayah Kalimantan sendiri terbagi dari 4, jadi dari pembangunan Kalimantan Barat, Kalimantan Timur, Kalimantan Tengah, dan Kalimantan Tengah gitu. Nah, selanjutnya khususnya dalam Kalimantan Timur sendiri itu lebih kepada mendorong percepatan perkembangan masing-masing wilayah pembangunan khususnya di wilayah ibu kota Samarinda, yang mana terbagi menjadi wilayah utara dan wilayah selatan, di mana utara itu adalah daerah sekitaran wilayah Kutai dan Samarinda, sedangkan dalam wilayah selatan sendiri itu ada wilayah Samarinda dan juga wilayah wilayah selatan Samarinda gitu, yang mana dari hasilnya itu ada berupa data gitu, yang dimana ada beberapa data potensial, yang mana 46,71% tuh memiliki produksi yang sangat besar gitu dari Kalimantan berdasarkan Rusmanto. Nah, setelah masa Orde Baru yang sentralistik pun berubah gitu, yang dimana menjadi reformasi, yang dimana hal itu bisa kita lihat gitu ya dalam isi Undang-Undang Nomor 22 Tahun 1999, yang mana lebih mendorong pemerintah daerah itu lebih aktif gitu, yang dimana ada fungsi desentralisasi dan mulai ada pengembangan otonomi daerah masing-masing gitu. Nah, dari desentralisasi yang dijalankan ini lebih kepada apa ya, proses pembangunan ekonomi gitu, yang mana kita bisa lihat dari data dari Badan Statistik Nasional gitu, di mana berdasarkan BPS itu sendiri memiliki laporan bahwa pertumbuhan ekonomi Indonesia ini masih dominan dimiliki oleh Pulau Jawa, di mana memiliki angka 58,29%, Sumatera 22,21%, dan Kalimantan 8,15%. Nah, meskipun begitu, meskipun kita lihat bahwa ekonomi khususnya di Kalimantan itu berkembang gitu, namun kesejahteraan sosial itu masih kurang gitu. Hal ini kita bisa lihat dari laporan BPS pada tahun 2015, yang mana masih ada sekitar 57.000 jiwa gitu di wilayah Kutai Kertanegara, di mana masih banyak penduduk yang angka kesejahteraannya itu masih kecil gitu. Nah, hal ini mengindikasikan bahwa infrastruktur yang berjalan selama reformasi berlangsung sebagai syarat menggerakkan ekonomi masyarakat, namun belum sampai menjangkau sebagian besar wilayah Kaltim karena persebaran wilayah Kalimantan itu cukup besar gitu. Paling sekian saja dari presentasi saya mengenai perkembangan otonomi daerah Kalimantan Timur. Mungkin saya tutup. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam. Okay, thank you very much. And Hamid S. Bagaskara. Well, to other students, please you start to make the brief comment also and sending directly to the WhatsApp group. Not waiting until me finish in the make also the brief comment. Okay, I think my comment related to the student presentation today. is similar with the previously presentation. Particularly, it is very important to every student to mastery about the standard history book, okay, or standard history sources. So I think it is very important. If you also have used this standard sources, for example, please should be understand about this standard history textbook. So I think it is very important, not only it is available in the reference, but also should be read these standards historical sources. Okay. However, I would like to give the specifically one by one about your presentation. Okay, firstly to Rizky Budimansyah. Okay, so I think okay, your title is the historical title, but I think if your period is in 1999 to 2001, I think it is too short period. So to understand about the thinking, political attitude, including also I think policy of Abdurrahman Wahid, you should analyze this figure since he still was young. Okay, so not only when he became the president of the Republic of Indonesia, but how the thinking, the political attitude, Gus Dur since he, for example, became the chairman of Nahdlatul Ulama, for example, or since he was still young, when he studied in Iraq, studied in Egypt, and so on and so forth. I think it's very important to understand how Gus Dur had the idea about the pluralism or democracy in Indonesia. Okay, so if you just see 1919, 2001, I think it is too short period. You cannot understand what the political vision of Gus Dur related to the pluralism idea. Okay, so it is very important. And however you analyze it also still descriptively, not yet analysis cause and effect. Okay. So yeah, it is very important to identify, to analyze Gus Dur when he before became the president. Okay, because I think the political attitude of Gus Dur is consistent. When the new order government had the policy about the what we call as the mono what is maybe mono ideology, mono politics, and so on and so forth. Gus Dur criticized because Gus Dur didn't like about the monopolitic, monosocial, and cultural. It should be diversity, should be pluralism. It is the political attitude Gus Dur still, he was young, not only when he became the president. Okay, because of that, it is very important to analyze, to identify also how the political attitude Gus Dur in the time of the order, for example, in which Gus Dur criticized, for example, the Ajas Tunggal, the mono ideology in which the Pancasila, 5 basic principles to be just one ideology, of course, NU, Nahdlatul Ulama, and Gus Dur criticized about the new order government, including also Gus Dur didn't agree fully with the ICMI because ICMI as the mono platform, maybe for the Islamic organization. Gus Dur said, I think Islamic Ummah should be should be diversified, should be plural, not only one institution like ICMI. Because of that, Gus Dur also criticized about the ICMI, including also when the new order government have the policy about the intai, PKI, intai, communism, Gus Dur criticized. Communism, Marxism is the danger ideology for Indonesia, but not all Indonesian people categorized as a communist should be punished. Because of that, Gus Dur criticized about the policy of new order government related to the communism. But of course, we can understand about the political attitude and political thinking of Gus Dur concerned with pluralism, if we can also understand about the history of NU, the establishment of NU in 1926. Okay, as we know that NU was responding or criticized about the emerging of Wahhabism in Middle East, particularly in Saudi Arabia, in which the Islam as the radical movement. So for Gus Dur, Wahhabism ideology or radical political ideology like the Wahhabi didn't what is agreed fully and should be denied. Because of that, NU established in 1926 by grandfather of Gus Dur Awan Selof, Kiai Haji Hashim Asyari, and continued by his father, Wahid Hasim, and Gus Dur. So I think we can understand about the pluralism ideology of Gus Dur, not when he became the president. Okay, should be analyzed before he became the president. Okay? And I think finally why Gus Dur stepped down from his position as president should be analyzed. I think the relationship between the Gus Dur and Indonesian military, particularly Indonesian army. Okay, so I think Gus Dur not only what is not good, didn't good relation with the Indonesian military leaders, for example, with General Wiranto and others. Because of that, when Gus Dur want to conduct the president decree in which the state in the emergence, the Indonesian military didn't fully supported him and didn't fully agree. And I think should be analysis also about the case of Brunei Gate, in which the Sultan of Brunei, Sultan Hasan al-Bolkiah, donate to Indonesian government led by President Gus Dur some money, and Gus Dur cannot accountable about this Brunei Gate, Brunei donation from Sultan Brunei. Because of that, Gus Dur should be responsible, and then the parliament finally make the decision to step down Gus Dur from his position. Okay, so I think it is very important to analyze it. However, about your reference, it is good that the aid sources, including also good the biography of Abdurrahman Wahid written by Greg Barton. Okay, good. But please you understand about, should be read about this biography from Greg Barton. Okay, in order you understand about the political attitude, including also political thinking of Gus Dur. But please should be added, because if we want to understand about the NU history, you should be read about the George Pillay. Okay, it is the historian or social sciences from Australia. George Pillay wrote about the history of NU, including also Martin van Brunissen, because Martin van Brunissen conducted a research on the Tarekat movement and Islamic boarding school, particularly in NU Islamic boarding school. So I think we can understand about the school of thoughts or social and cultural attitude of the NU members. Okay, why the most of NU members is moderate attitude should be understand about the research conducted by Martin van Prunessen, including also should be using about the history of NU, Nahdlatul Ulama, emerging of Islamic scholars, and of course IDAS. Also, I think it is good idea to be used because it is the product of historical standard book in the time of reform. Okay, Rizky, please you add your analysis comprehensively and deeply, not only descriptively related to the Abdurrahman Mahir. You should be read deeply about the Judge Barton in order you understand about the political attitude and political perspective of Gus Dur related to the pluralism idea and its implementation in Indonesia. Okay, the next, Muhammad Ikhwan Al-Kisam, similar also analysis about Gus Dur. Unfortunately, you didn't use the Greg Barton. Okay, please you what is following the Rizky Budimansyah. Maybe you learn the book of Greg Barton because this is the authoritative book related to the biography of Abdurrahman Wahid. Okay, it is very important. I think translated in the Bahasa Indonesia, this book, okay, in order you can also understand how the political attitude of Gus Dur to the Chinese ethnic in Indonesia, okay. And I think it is also similar in order we can understand about the political attitude Gus Dur to the Chinese ethnic should be analyzed also before he became the president. Okay, so we should be understand, for example, why the New Order government in 1968 to 1998 anti-China, okay, anti-China, anti-China, because as we know that this is related to the critical event of the G30S 1965, in which the Indonesian Communist Party supported by China Communist Party. Okay, so China government supported the Indonesian Communist Party. Because of that, the political relationship between the New Order and the China government in the time of New Order government was not good in relationship. Because of that, the policy of New Order government also anti-China. Of course, Gus Dur didn't fully agree with the policy of New Order government. Because of that, since the New Order government, Gus Dur did the good relationship, for example, with the China's businessmen. Maybe you should be analysis about the establishment of Bank Nu Suma. It is the bank collaboration between the NU organization and the Chinese businessmen. However, this is failed, not a success story. But however, it is indicated that good relationship between Gus Dur as the representative of NU and the Chinese businessmen in the time of New Order government. Okay, including also, I think it is very important to mention and analysis, as we know that post G30S 1965, as we know, there's the young organization of NU, Banser NU, who killed many members of PKI, particularly in East Java. Okay, so maybe this is Gus Dur should be pardoned to the PKI because the young wing of organization, Banser NU, did killing to many PKI members. Okay, and most of the PKI members also the Chinese ethnic. Okay, so and of course should be analysis also about the idea of Gus Dur related to the pluralism, including also democracy. As we know, in the last New Order government period in 1990s, for example, when the New Order government supported the ICMI, Gus Dur didn't agree with ICMI, and he, with his colleagues, established the PORDEM, okay, PORDEM, Forum Demokrasi. So, in which the members of PORDEM is not only a Muslim but also non-Muslim, from leaders of Catholic, Protestant, and others religion. This is showing that Gus Dur concerned with the democracy and its implementation in Indonesia, including also related to the pluralism idea. Okay, so I think your reference 3 sources is not yet enough. Please add it with the standard historical sources. Greg Barton, Philae, as I have mentioned, History of NU, Martin van Brunesen, about the tradition of tarekat, tradition of mysticism in Islamic boarding school. I think History of NU also should be searching and should be used. Reclap, I think it is a good idea, should be used because it is a general history of Indonesia and IDA. Okay, Ivan, I think please you should be analysis about the role of Gus Dur not only when he became the president, okay, but how the role, the political attitude, the political thing of Gus Dur related to the China's ethnic in the time, for example, New Order government. Okay, so I think it is very important to show that Gus Dur attitude is consistent. Okay, not only when he became the president and labeled by the China's ethnic as the Bapak pluralisme, Bapak demokrasi, because when Gus Dur still young and also in the time of New Order government, he consistent in thinking related to the pluralism, related to the appreciate to the minority rights, and so on and so forth, including also the religion, official religion in Indonesia, Konghucu, for example. Okay, so should be analysis about the political thinking of Gus Dur since he was still young until he became the president. Okay, the next, Amanda Putri. I think your title was changed from the red sentence to the black sentence, modify, okay. Good, it is, but I think, yeah, your title is no information. What will you analyze about this figure? Okay, you just said masa kepresidenan Megawati Soekarno Putri. What will you analyze? Okay, the role of Megawati Soekarno Putri, her policy, her political attitude, and so forth. Okay, so maybe it should be the role, the contribution, the political policy, and so on and so forth. Okay? Not only masa kepresidenan Soekarno Putri. I think it is not clear about what you will analyze this figure. Okay, and however your just descriptively, not analyzing cause and effect. Okay, and who is Megawati Soekarno Putri? I think not fully analyzed comprehensively. I think you should be aware that Megawati was born in 1947 in the time of Indonesian Revolution in Yogyakarta. Okay, and how he became a growing teenager, including also actively in the politics and so on and so forth, and her struggle in the time of New Order, and finally leading the PDIP Indonesian Democracy Party struggle, I think should be analysis. It's very important. Not only concentrate why he fell, became the president, just deputy, just vice president in the time of Gus Dur period, and then he replaced Gus Dur as the president. I think it is not fully understand about the biography of Megawati Soekarno Putri. Okay, and then as you know that the silent is gold, diam itu emas. It is the attitude of Megawati not only when he became the president, when he's still young, when he I think it is the characteristic of Megawati. Okay, so she is the calm woman. She always a silent woman. Because of that, it is his characteristic when he's still young, that he's still teenager. Okay, should be analysis about the biography of Megawati Soekarno Putri. Okay, and it is very important. Although you mentioned, okay, why indirectly general election for the president in 2004, Megawati was defeated by the Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono, BAN SBY. Okay, so I think it is very important. It is also showing that when directly general election for president election, I think majority of Indonesian people still appreciate about the male candidate. Okay, in this case it's SBY. So female candidate Megawati was defeated by the SBY. So what does that mean? Maybe should be analysis based on gender perspective. Okay, that in Indonesian culture, for example, that okay, maybe the role of man is still dominant comparing with the woman. Okay, maybe should be also comparing with other what is other country, for example the Philippines. Okay, I think the president of Philippines is the success story, particularly because his daughter became the president. Okay, for example, Macapagal had the daughter Ario Macapagal became the president in Philippines. Okay, and then who is Corajong Aquino? Okay, the wife of Aquino Jr. Okay, including also, and now Bongbong Marcos. Okay? Bongbong Marcos is a son of Ferdinand Marcos. So it is the paternalistic culture maybe, okay, in Southeast Asian countries. And in Indonesian case, I think still only Megawati as the female president became the top leader in Indonesia, but however, in the next directly presidency election, we didn't know about the candidate from the female, from the woman figure, okay, for the president. Still a domination by the male or man candidate. Okay, so should be analysis based on maybe gender perspective or cultural perspective. Okay, and what is important also, I think it is should be analysis. As we know, Megawati lead the PDIP, Indonesian Democracy Struggle, since 1999 until currently. Okay, so why it is Megawati maybe had the political strategy like his father, Soekarno, President Soekarno, in which there's the two methods in educate the members of political organization, what we call as the mass forming and cadre forming. Mass forming is based on the mass organization. Meanwhile, cadre forming based on the cadre education. So mass forming, it is the President Sukarno style in managing the political organization. Meanwhile, cadre forming is the Muhammad Hatta style in political education. So according Muhammad Hatta, what is important for the political party should be educate the members so they become the educated man or woman, not monopolize about the leadership like Sukarno in the guided democracy, okay, including also Megawati now. I think who will succeed the replace the Megawati as the chairwoman of PDIP? I think it is not good in the cadre forming, okay, because still dominate in the PDIP. I think it is should be also analysis. So maybe it is good idea also if the role or the whatever the characteristic, the policy of Megawati not only until 2004, maybe until currently, okay, in which the style of leadership of Megawati, particularly in managing the Indonesian Democracy Party struggle, okay. And your reference is good. They are the 11 sources, but should be added with the authoritative historical sources, okay. Particularly, please use searching about the biography of Megawati written academically by the maybe historian or social scientists, okay. Please use searching about the biography of Megawati in order we can understand about the who and who's Megawati Sukarno Putri. So we can identify his characteristic, okay, his style, his attitude, and so on and so forth. Her attitude, so sorry. And if we want to understand about the history of PNI, Indonesian National Party, since established in 1927 by his father, Sukarno Yang, I think you should read about the Rocamora. John Rocamora, Ersa Rocamora. Please you searching in the Google, okay, Rocamora. About the PNI, translated in the Bahasa Indonesia, it is the PhD dissertation in Cornell University, I think. Good idea, comprehensively, how we can understand about the history of PNI as the, what is origin of the PDIP, okay? So I think it's very important. And reclap also should be used, including also SNI and IDAI. Okay, Amanda, please, you should be clear about your title. What will you be analyzing? Okay, the role, the political attitude, political policy of Megawati, and so on and so forth. Should be clear, okay? Not only masa kepresidenan Megawati, ya apanya yang mau dianalisis? Okay, and the last is Muhammad Hanif Surya Bagaskara. Okay, I think it is also similar because it is about the regional autonomy, okay, in the post-New Order era or in the time reform. I think should be analyzed until currently, okay, because as you know that the regional autonomy not ending until 2014 until currently, okay. So I think your period should be until currently in order we can understand how the implication of the regional autonomy, not only in Indonesia in general, but also in every region in Indonesia. Okay. However, your analysis just descriptively, and you just law-centric, okay? It is very important to understand about the law of regional autonomy. However, how its implementation, it is very critical, okay? And for example, why also the regional autonomy in Indonesia, not like in the USA, not like in the Malaysia, not like in other country, in which the regional autonomy giving to the kabupaten and kota, not to the province. Okay, I think it is very important to understand because we have the bad memory related to the federal state created by the Dutch colonial government. Okay, particularly Panmuk, Haji Panmuk as the father of federal state in Indonesia. It is the bad memory for Indonesian government. Because of that, if the regional autonomy giving to the province, maybe Indonesia will become like the Yugoslavia, in which each province become the state, and then will break down. And yeah, what is not good for Indonesian Republic. Okay, but because of that, I think since the President Habibie, Gus Dur, Megawati, regional autonomy should be given to the regency or kabupaten and kota, not to the province. Okay, it is very important. And it should be also comparing about, okay, Hanif, you mentioned about the statistic data, okay, but should be comparison, for example, how the economic development or the achievement of development in regional, particularly East Kalimantan, in the time of New Order government and in the time of reform era. In order we can conclude it that, for example, whether in the time of reform era, the economic development in East Kalimantan is progress, stagnant, or left behind. Ya, jadi apakah pembangunan masa otonomi daerah itu pada masa reformasi dibandingkan yang Orde Baru lebih maju, stagnan, atau lebih mundur? I think it is needed the comparison data or statistic between the economic development in the time of New Order in one hand and in the time of regional autonomy in the reform era. Okay, in order we can evaluate or we can make the conclusion. For example, that the economic development in the time of reform era is good comparing with the time of New Order era, for example. Okay. And your friend also the Aston sources, okay, but as I have mentioned, should be read about the idea of federal state written by Van Mook. Okay, please you searching in the Google, and if Van Mook is issued about the federal state, but for the regional autonomy, the idea, the critical idea, and maybe the father of the regional autonomy in Indonesia in the time of reform era is, please you read about the Riaz Rashid book, Riaz Rashid idea, because he is the prominent figure who has the idea about the regional autonomy in Indonesia. Okay, Riaz Rashid book or article, please you searching in the Google. Okay, Reclap also very important to be used, including also IDAS, because IDAS is the historical sources officially written in the time of reform era. Okay. So that's my comment, my criticize, also my suggestion. And as you know that you just have time 1 week, okay, to make the pool people, because in the next week, all people should be collected and please sending directly to the email, okay. Let's ensure your pool people should be written in MS Word, not in the PDF file, okay. And how the structure of the pool people I have shared with you in the WhatsApp group. So maybe this is the last presentation and the last discussion, because in the next week, all students should be collected and sending the pool people. And hopefully my comment, my criticize, including also my suggestion, my recommendation related to your title, please you concern and take care because it is very important, particularly about the standard sources. Okay, so I will see how about your poor people whether using the standard sources, and not only standard sources, but also, of course, in analysis, whether you are giving the new perspective or not. And what is important thing also should be correct in writing the reference. Okay, I just want to remind you, if the sources comes from the book, please ensure that the title of the book should be italic. Okay, the title of the book should be italic, garis miring. Okay, if the sources comes from the article from the academic journal, the name of journal should be italic. Okay, and if the sources comes from the undergraduate thesis, master thesis, and PhD thesis, please ensure that unpublished undergraduate thesis, unpublished master thesis, unpublished PhD thesis should be italic. Okay, I think it is very important in order you can write the article based on the academic criterion. Okay, I think that's my comment, criticize, suggestion, and recommendation today. Let's ending our virtual meeting, virtual lecture today by reciting together also Hamdalah. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Thank you very much. Inshallah, we will meet again in next week. I would like to see you poor people, and I will share about how the structure of your people and how to send the email address, okay, in WhatsApp group. Thank you very much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Ustaz.
Okay, you're welcome. We can leave.